This is the point in the show that I introduce our guest analysts who are here to give their perspectives on nearly everything we've covered in the past 40 minutes or so on the program. And today I'm joined here in the studio by the Arise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper Mahmud Jega, and by the political affairs commentator, Arise News analyst and lecturer at Bayes University in Abuja, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. Thank you as always, gentlemen.
Yeah.
And let me come to you, Prof. Why is, you heard us talking with Ayo Oyalowo, who's a member of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, about the absence of their presidential candidate at today's seminal event. What's your assessment of his response and his reasons?
Yeah, I think he made light of what appears to be the serious question of absence. You know, he was quite confident. Some of his responses were very logical, you know, especially saying that APC presidential flag bearer, you know, has once more made a detour to London to rest, because he can hardly rest in Abuja, he can hardly rest in Lagos, and London is about the best place for him to rest, you know. Well, it looks quite reasonable, but of course I'm worried about costs. I'm also worried about the further stress that will result from having to jet out to London. You know, and I'm also worried about the continuous suspicion about the real motive behind those frequent foreign trips, you know. And of course, why London all the time, you know? I mean, this is a time where we should expect some decolonization of our minds, you know, away from London being a kind of preferred tourist destination by the average Nigerian leader. And if we're expecting some new set of leaders, we need them to give us some level of value reorientation. And of course, if one of those orientations should be for us to de-emphasize, you know, preferences for foreign opportunities, foreign services, you know. I mean, why not go to Obudu Cattle Ranch, for instance?
It's so funny. I was just thinking of Obudu.
That's right.
That's exactly
why not
what
look for
came
another
to my
tourist
mind.
destination? And of course, he's not a small person, a former governor of Lagos State, a very prominent person. If he wants to lock himself up in a mansion in Abuja or in a hotel room in Abuja and ask people, and ask the security agencies to prevent people from coming to him, I'm sure he can do that. You know, some of these things are actually symbolic. You know, we need to up our game in doing things that are good to the optics, things that will heal our sensitivities against the background of the deprivation and the deprivation that we've been complaining about over the years with regards to our values, our moralities, and all of that. You know, yes, he has his choice, and he's an individual. He's an individual. He can make his decision. He has the means. But again, we are looking at the bigger picture, you know, as
especially
a
potential, if you're asking us for your vote.
Yes, as a potential
for our
leader.
votes,
You know. So that's my initial take. Otherwise, you know, Oyawe did a lot of work, you know, in terms of dissolving the seriousness of the event, of you know, the question of absence. You know, it was quite forthcoming, and he did his best as an official of the party.
Well, Mahmud Jega, you listened to him as well. You know, he certainly made the effort, and as I said to him, we will see how much what he's told us will come to pass. But what are your thoughts on that?
That is the most important thing. You know, when he said there's going to be 5 months of grueling campaign from now until February election, and Asiwaju had to take a rest. It reminds me of what we used to read in primary school, that a man is on holiday before the exam, and it was, you lived in Britain. Here in Nigeria, you don't rest before exam. You can only rest after the exam. But I understand that it has been very hectic and is going to get a lot more hectic. But so he probably needs that rest. Of course, the rest may include medical check or whatever it is. But in the end, it is what happens when the candidates return and fully launch the campaign and begin all the grueling tour around the country and endless rallies and press conferences and all that. Just what you said to round off, that okay, the assurances, the things you said sound quite reasonable, but let us see if they are borne out in the end.
But do you think it's a good strategy, though, to kind of ease yourself into the campaigns rather than charge into the campaign?
I agree that it didn't make very good optics, especially because the party primaries finished in May, and this is September. In fact, personally, when I saw the INEC timetable, I said, why, if you know that the campaign will not start until September, why did we do the primaries in May? We could have done them in July. So all arrangements, all the resting, every other thing should have been done within this period. And everybody was looking forward to Wednesday and saying this is the official start of the campaign. And we thought by now the whole place would be...
talking about being entertained, sitting back, kicking back, all these sort of carnivals and so
it is okay if the candidate takes a rest, but it shouldn't be a very long rest. They should really come and make the best out of these 5 months, because on the other hand, the country is large, 36 states. That is, even if you campaign only in state capitals, that will still take most of the 5 months. And I remember back in the Second Republic, the candidates were campaigning not just in state capitals, but in every major town. They were going by road that time. So you come to state capitals, and you go to the next 2 or 3 major towns in the state, and everything. Very grueling that time. Now maybe because there are more states. That time there were 19, now there are 36. So possibly that explains, but still, really they should make the best of this 5 months.
Right. Okay. Professor, let's turn to that issue of the Peace Committee, which took place today. How much of this agreement do you think strikes a chord across the different levels of the political parties? Because there are parts of this country where campaigning tends to be violent. I mean, it's been that way for a long time because of local rivalries and divisions that tend to manifest themselves during the election season.
Yeah, but first I think we need to commend the Peace Committee for being very consistent, former head of state. And of course, this ex-retired general has been very consistent in this area. Do not forget that he was the one that eventually delivered democracy after all the rigmarole by President Babangida and after all the strangulation by General Abacha. But Abdulsalam Abubakar delivered democracy, and he has continued afterwards to sustain it, to deepen it, to help us consolidate it. And of course, salutes we also have to go to my Lord Bishop Kuka. He's also been very consistent. And this set of people, they have come to present themselves as the moral compass of the political evolution of this country. Some kind of conscience around which we can situate things just to make sure that we continue what we're doing, because there's no option other than democracy. So having said that, I think, the accord is also something rather symbolic. Sometimes, of course, we see flashes of crisis when the elections proper are coming. But of course, anybody deviating from the terms of the accord will know at the end of the day that there's something that is missing, that there's a value you're not adding to yourself after making an earlier commitment, that you're going to champion the cause of peace in the electioneering process. It can be helpful at the level of guidance, at the level of moral reorientation, reminding them that they have a greater role to the citizenry, to the future of this country, much more than their own self-interest. So we have seen it happening in the past, and of course, some of them keep making references to it. But other than that, I think the law will also have to come in. Don't forget that the accord remains at the level of morals, at the level of moral suasion. Not necessarily something that is enforceable, but the law has to come in as well. Regulations matter. Not just being present is one thing, but of course, dealing with infraction is also another thing. How well are we going to be committed to apprehending those that want to subvert the electoral process, and dealing with them as a deterrence, to others that may want to do it as a staggered election continue when it eventually starts February. So those things are very important. We should grow up to dealing with those who commit crime, who commit electoral offenses. as an act of, as a deterrence to others.
Absolutely.
Because that's actually our bid. We tend to look away from these infractions, concentrating on some other things. Or maybe when results are out, we just tend to forget about it. And of course, when another election cycle comes, you see people repeating some of these offenses. It's important that our laws are not just black letter laws. They're not just in the books. Okay. There's implementation and or execution is also important, Charles.
Okay, and Mahmud Jega, I mean, you've watched elections in this country, election periods and so on. Do you see this? Are you more hopeful this time that it'll be less fractious than it was in the past, or are you less hopeful?
I hope it will be much better. Certainly, our elections have been improving in the last 10 years or so. I agree that this accord that the Peace Committee has made parties to sign is very important at the moral suasion level. But you see, the problem is you may get presidential candidates and party chairmen to sign these agreements or gubernatorial candidates at state level. But that's not where the problem is. Most of the infractions are caused by party officials and supporters below their level, with or without their knowledge. You see, there are certain things about politicians. As, for example, a local government chapter chairman of a party, I am intent on making sure that my party wins that local government. It's not that the gubernatorial candidate sent me or anything, but what I fear most is that if he wins the election and it comes time to share the spoils, other party people will say, you didn't deliver your local government, or the votes that we got in your local governments are so little. So that's why they go the whole hog. They don't really care about it. That's what his eyes are set on. Now, certain things bad practices have largely stopped due to electoral reforms. For example, up to 10 years ago, people used to snatch ballot boxes and stuff them. You don't do that now, because with the coming of PVC and card reader, those ones will not be counted. However, the incentive for starting violence has still not been eliminated. For example, you start trouble in a place where your opponent is strong, so that the vote in that whole area will be cancelled. So we still have to keep on
that's a good observation. So we've got to be on our toes.
Exactly.
Right, okay. Mahmud Jega and, of course, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, thank you very much indeed.